I don't know about you, but I'm feeling 22. Welcome, everyone, to Awful Takes Podcast, episode 22.
Nice.
We're here.
Nice.
Yeah, we've had a great week. Super excited to talk about a great movie today, in my opinion. Welcome if you're joining us on Spotify, YouTube. Time descriptions are below. So you can either listen to me ramble on for a little bit, or you can just jump to the review, whichever one you prefer. My name is Nabahi, and I am joined today by my co-host.
Hello, I'm Wallied from Sir Gator Productions.
And we are here to talk about 2006 Pan's Labyrinth, directed by Guillermo Del Toro. Yeah, I'm really excited. This is a movie that expanded my viewpoint on movies when I saw it. My brother was in film criticism class, and this was one of the movies they showed. And that's kind of where I get a lot of my deeper appreciation on some lesser known movies. My brother would bring home tons of different films and things to watch. I don't know, it's just like a cool couple of years, of just expanding your viewpoint, kind of widening the door into movies and the different sides of them. I did want to talk about this movie during the horror season because I feel like it has some great horror elements in it. However, when I started to think about it more and more, I was like, you know what? No, this really feels more just kind of like a war movie mixed with like a fairy tale fantasy, and it has those horror elements. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to wait for this one. As much as I wanted to recommend it, I feel like just simply trying to dub this as a horror movie is kind of does this movie a disservice, Really excited. If you haven't seen this movie, I can't recommend it enough. We're going to be getting into full spoilers and things. I know Guillermo Del Toro is a name that is becoming more and more synonymous with the general populace. I know many people have heard that name before. He won the Best Director and Best Picture award a couple of years ago for The Shape of Water. And I love that movie. I love a lot of his movies. Yet Pan's Labyrinth for me is just on another level when it comes to his filmography. I know a lot of people probably think the same way, yet I feel like this movie isn't talked about as much, especially with a lot of the movies he's doing now. And I feel like this movie would really benefit from a re-release or, a kind of a big debut on streaming. It's on streaming now. I just feel like this movie is like pinnacle for the time period in which it came out. At least that's kind of how I view it. So the story takes place in Spain in the summer of 1944. Obviously, when you hear that year, you think about, World War II was going on. It was coming towards the end. But there was also the Spanish Civil War that had happened years before that. So this movie kind of takes place in that post-Spanish Civil War. The world and everything has a very real world feel, and I really love that about this movie. It feels like just a mishmash of so many different genres and things, and it does each of those genres justice. Like when you're seeing the war part of this film, it's amazing. When you're seeing the fantasy film part of this film, it's amazing. When you see those horror elements thrown in it, it's done super, super well, and it all comes together in like this larger than life fairy tale. When my brother first described it to me, he's like, yeah, this movie's like a fairy tale, yet it's like rated R. There's a lot of graphic blood and things, and there's a lot of scary stuff in it. And I was just like, whoa, that sounds cool. I was like excited. And I did say on the last podcast, this is one of my favorite foreign films because technically this is a foreign film. When it came out in 2006, it wasn't like a wide release or anything. It was in December, I believe, and it just, aired outside of the US, and eventually it kind of gained traction, and there was more once the award season kind of started up. The US audience kind of started to see it. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that I love about this movie. I'm super excited to talk about it. I guess, Walid, I know you're a Del Toro fan, so kind of can you walk me through what you're thinking? Like, was this a movie you had heard about? Had it ever piqued your interest to go and find it? I'm curious.
Yeah. So I was pretty familiar with Del Toro in high school. I remember really enjoying the Hellboy films in high school. Those were kind of a big thing for me. And I remember really liking his most recent Pinocchio film that I really, really enjoyed. I think honestly it might be the best Pinocchio adaptation I've seen.
Nice.
And for a while, I actually had heard about this film in high school. It's been on my watch list for years and years, and I just never got around to watching it just because I think it was a little bit harder to find. And I had heard bits and pieces about the film, but I had always seen that like picture of like the monster, and I always thought that looked like super cool and just like super out there. So watching this for the first time, I was very, very surprised with what this film was because I kind of made the assumption going into it that it was going to be more of like lean more into like the fairy tale side of the film. But I was very surprised how grounded it was and how it was just much more of like a war film and much more of like a character film. That definitely caught me off guard watching it for sure. But I ended up really loving that like drama character side of the film very, very much.
Yeah. Was this when, obviously being a Del Toro fan, what kind of stopped you from seeking it out for a long time? Like obviously like you had heard about it, but what kind of prevented you from kind of, all right, I'm going to watch this movie, if there was anything at all?
I don't know if there was anything that was kind of preventing me from watching it. I think for me, I think what was kind of preventing me from watching it was because I wanted to give it like the time of day. I kind of have the habit of when I put something on the watch list, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm in the mood for this, or I kind of wanted to make sure I gave this film like the full time and attention just to check it out, just because like I'd always just heard so much amazing things about it, and I wanted to make sure it was something that like I was gonna be in the mood for, and that I was gonna be like in that headspace of like what Del Toro was making with this film.
Yeah.
So that definitely, I would maybe say that was kind of the reason why I put off the film for a while, just because like I wanted to make sure I had watched a few more of his films before checking this one out. So just to get more of an idea of like the types of films Guillermo makes. So
nice.
Yeah.
This movie came to mind obviously very early on when thinking of making recommendations. However, I feel like this does ask a little bit of the audience. I feel like this is not the easiest sell to people because obviously you're describing like war situations, you're describing all this different stuff, and it really kind of just leaves the question of like, wait, what is that? But I feel like this would resonate a lot with the modern pop culture going on right now, with its love of like, fantasy type films and things like that.
Yeah.
I feel
creatures too.
yeah, this is just super amazing. And I don't know, it helped push that fantasy era kind of forward a little bit. Obviously we were coming off of like Lord of the Rings and things like that. So those fantasy films were already pretty elevated. However, I feel like this kind of takes it in that other direction, of melding the two genres together of real world consequences and situations mixed with fantasy, maybe a little bit better than something like Harry Potter or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, all right, we'll get into it. So the film opens up, amazing opening. You're already kind of hinted into this kind of musical score lullaby. Technically, I guess that's what it is. And it's amazing. It's an amazing piece of music. And obviously, when you hear the term lullaby, you're already kind of thinking of like childlike, whimsical for kids, and this movie doesn't shy away from that. Obviously, the protagonist is a 10-year-old girl. So you're already kind of thrown for a loop right away of like, okay, not only is this a dark fantasy film, but it focuses around a young girl. And there's this great opening narration about this kind of fantasy story. And the visuals that are on screen, they look really awesome. I don't know. It's just something that I liked.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the use of colors throughout, it felt like I was looking at like a storybook that's like come to life pretty much.
Yep.
like those like kind of old fairy tales that I used to read in high school of like the much more mature versions of like a Cinderella or like a Rapunzel type of story. It felt like something in line with that, you know, where it has those whimsical elements, but it has like these really much more mature, disturbing themes.
Yeah.
And I loved just the colors in the film of like the bright blue, kind of like sea green type of colors
Hmm.
that they showed throughout. And I loved how consistent it was
Yeah.
throughout, where it didn't really change much. But
So the opening fairy tale is basically about a princess named Moana, whose father is king of the underworld, and she visits the human world where the sunlight blinds her and erases her memory. She becomes mortal and eventually dies. The king believes that eventually her spirit will return to the underworld, so he builds labyrinths around the world which act as portals in preparation for her return. Really just kind of striking. Just starting out, you're just kind of thrown into it, not only with the music and everything, but also the visuals, and really just sets up like a fairy tale, you know?
yeah,
uh,
it definitely sets up that kind of side of the film that you get to see like later on in the second half.
Yeah, and it's so genuine to like what you would expect of a fairy tale. Normally, if you would hear like, oh, this is an adult kind of fairy tale, you feel like they might try to treat these sequences in like a different way, you know?
Yeah.
Yet it doesn't shy away from that kid feel, that story feel,
Mhm.
and it really resonates super, super well, you know?
Yeah, one thing I kind of thought going into it was that it was going to be a much more like edgy kind of take on like the
Yeah.
fairy tale type of things, but I was very surprised with that intro sequence and just the beginning of just like how everything was just playing out, especially with the main character and everything. And I
Mhm.
really loved that a lot
It was
about the film.
awesome. Yeah. So, like I said, it's in 1944 in Spain, and you have a 10-year-old named Ophelia, and she is traveling with her mother, who is pregnant, to meet Captain Vidal. He is the captain of this regime that's sent to take on these rebels that are basically in the forest and things like that. And it kind of opens up with this car ride, and the mother's kind of describing the situation of what's going on. Very quickly, you know that she's pregnant. It's Ophelia's younger brother. And the setting of everything feels so like, I don't know, just genuine. Seeing the trees in the background, seeing the forest that is grown everywhere, looks amazing. It doesn't really feel like you're like on some movie set or anything like that,
Yeah,
you know?
it's very colorful. I love how the green and like a lot of the browns and yellows just pop out.
Yeah, just super just, you know, engrossing into the setting of the film.
Hmm.
So, like I said, Vidal's basically been tasked to hunt down this kind of Spanish insurrection, kind of remnants, rebels of a civil war, basically. And I believe they exit the car for a little bit. Obviously, you can tell that Ophelia's mom is getting close to birth. You know, she's getting pretty sick with things. She obviously is getting very tired and things like that. So you already get the sense that this baby's gonna be arriving very soon. When they exit the car, there is this large stick insect basically that like flies up to Ophelia. I don't know about she just looks at it super normal. That would freak me the hell out.
I jumped when I saw that. I was like, it just comes out of nowhere. That's one thing that happened throughout. I jumped like a lot of the time whenever just some random like creature thing just pops out.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that's just something that like for me as a kid, insects were the most terrifying thing. Like they just freaked me out every
Yeah.
time I'd see them. So yeah, the insect kind of leads her to this, you know, large kind of labyrinth, and already the set design on the labyrinth looks great.
I love that face on the
Yeah,
front. It looks horrifying.
yeah, really just kind of has that mystique to it where you're like, whoa, I want to know more, you know?
Yeah.
And then obviously when she's kind of going towards it, she sees, you know, the ancient stone and everything. But she's stopped by Captain Vidal's housekeeper, Mercedes. The introduction to her character with Ophelia is really great because you really get that sense of, yeah, Mercedes is obviously doing her job and everything, but she also cares, you know.
Yeah.
That's something that I really like with her character is she is subservient to this kind of villain almost, but she has that side of her that shows that she's also genuine in her own feelings towards her job that she has to carry out, you know. I really like that.
Yeah, she's definitely much more of like a mother figure in the film, especially because her mother is very sick, you know, so she kind of goes to her a lot. And I really loved that relationship between the two.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And you're introduced to this just a sick, twisted villain,
Yeah,
Captain Vidal.
it's an
He,
understatement.
right from his introduction, obviously, you see him interacting with the mother. You see that obviously his priorities are with this baby who is unborn. He kind of sees the mother and her daughter almost as kind of like a nuisance almost.
As like objects,
Yeah.
basically.
And
Yep.
Ophelia obviously kind of goes out of her way to she doesn't want to be there. It's already very clearly stated, yet she's trying to introduce herself to the captain. And his interaction with her is just like, what the fuck? Like, what's this guy's problem?
Yeah. It's very uncomfortable, very awkward.
Yeah. You can just tell that this guy is very meticulous in what he wants, you know. So obviously, this girl being brought there is just something that bothers him. You
Yeah.
know, it's seen more as just like something he has to put up with. You know.
Yeah, which is really twisted and sick.
Yeah, just insane.
Gosh.
And then not to mention later on when the captain is obviously they're at that dinner sequence, and he's just the way he talks to the mom and everything. I'm just like, oh my god, I just hate this guy.
Yeah, he's so unlikable. And I love that like side of like villainy that they show in this film of like where he's just like sick and twisted and there's just like no empathy or no sympathy
Exactly.
towards him. And I think he's like honestly like one of the best villains I think I've seen in any film, period.
Yeah. So later on that night, the insect appears back in Ophelia's bedroom, where it transforms into a fairy.
Which
And
scared the hell out of
yeah,
me. Like,
yeah.
scared the crap.
Again, how a 10-year-old child is not phased by this, I would be freaking out.
It definitely leans into that like kind of absurdity though of like a fairy tale where she just kind of like it's like maybe not the first time she's seen this. You know?
Yeah, that's true. I know growing up, my brother, he one time he told me about a story. He was like, 8 or 9, and there was like this giant butterfly kind of flying at him, and obviously butterflies, they're harmless, they're not going to do anything. But he's like, the
course.
closer it got, he freaked out and he just ran away from it. So how she's acting normal with this fairy is kind of insane. No, I'm just kidding. So when she's led to the labyrinth, she meets a creature called a fawn. And when you see the fawn, you just know that the character, this is something that I love with Guillermo del Toro. His character designs, costume designs,
The
look
creature
absolutely
designs
amazing.
look, yeah, fantastic.
And the practicality of it too, like this fawn like moves around in this like kind of eerie kind of way, at first.
Yeah.
You really get the feeling that he's kind of being awoken after such a long time,
Yeah, it doesn't look like somebody in like a costume.
Yeah.
I love this like the physical performance that the actor gives in that film. And I love too just like the design. It looks like he's like 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
And
And-
that is
and
really well done.
The voice acting that's done really is amazing. It sounds like something that's pleasing but also kind of menacing at the same time.
Yeah.
Obviously we'll get into it, but the fawn kind of has both of those sides about him. That at some points you may be happy that he's there, but then you also feel kind of like scared almost.
Yeah.
But right when he's introduced is just absolutely just kind of mind-blowing, It's just like, wow, this looks absolutely amazing. And then not even to mention the set design around him looks incredible too,
Yeah. It doesn't look like a studio. It looks like they actually like built that set.
Yeah.
It looks like again, it looks like something just like out of a fairy tale. It's like it's just come to life and I
Yeah.
love that. It the atmosphere and everything that like Guillermo creates with this film and everything, you know.
Yeah.
It's like a nightmare but a dream at the same time.
That makes sense. So the fawn basically believes she's the reincarnation of Princess Moana. He gives her a book and tells her that she will find in it 3 tasks to complete in order to acquire immortality and return to her kingdom. This is where, well, obviously in the beginning of the film, you get the sense that Ophelia is out of place in reality. You know, you get the feeling that she herself, besides her ties to her family, is having a hard time coming to terms with everything that's going on in her life. She's obviously very driven by her mom and her little brother, who is yet to be born. But you almost get that sense of sorrow that she doesn't really belong in this world, in this time right now.
Yeah, I was surprised how dark it got, and I kind of see the fantasy elements of the film as like escapism. I kind of see it as like a distraction from the world that she's in, because obviously she has this really evil regime leader there, and obviously her mother is very sick, and I feel like the fantasy elements kind of represent her in like a different headspace of like trying to get rid of the fact that like she's in this kind of sad reality that she's in, you know, and especially because she's growing up so fast in this world also. I see that just kind of as like a representation of like trying to bring back that kind of inner child that she used to have.
Yeah. And already with the, obviously the fantasy ties and a character who's very grounded in reality, you get a lot of resemblances to like a Miyazaki film of, you know, that kind of escapism. Yet it's in a realistic, real world setting, you know, that's something that was so evident now rewatching it, is just like, wow, this feels a lot like Studio Ghibli or something, like kind of come to life.
Yeah, it's like a live action kind of version of that almost.
It's really awesome. But obviously Del Toro, like Miyazaki, has that appreciation for fantasy stories and those childlike stories that you hear growing up.
Yeah, those like kind of folk tales.
Yeah. Now, after this introduction and obviously the layout of kind of the plot of this film, with her kind of being tasked to finish all these challenges, basically these tasks that she has to do, it cuts to a scene with the captain involving these 2 people that were seen wandering around in the forest, and they're mistaken for rebels pretty much. So the captain is kind of brought in to assess the situation, and you get the very blunt realization that this guy is very evil and twisted. These rebels kind of say to him, like, you know, we were out hunting rabbits, you know, we were not part of any militia or anything like that. And the captain just, he's so meticulous in how he does things. He's obviously searching their belongings, going through stuff, and he's not outright, you know, commanding them in any way. He's very subtle with how he does things. Like, they're trying to talk to him and he just says, like, be quiet, like, don't talk again, you know. He's not like yelling at them or acting evil outright.
Yeah,
very subtle, you know,
very calm anger type of tone.
Yeah,
you know,
and then all of a sudden it just shifts, and this captain just outright murders one of them. He pulls out a wine bottle and he just breaks it against the face of the son, and it is absolutely graphic.
It was hard to watch.
Just horrifying. Just like, oh shit, like, this guy is fucked up, you know?
Yeah.
And then he shoots the dad, and nothing fazed him. Nothing fazed him about that. He's murdering this guy with a wine bottle, and his expression doesn't change.
He's very apathetic.
You can see that his military is just kind of like looking at him like, Jesus Christ, you know?
Yeah.
And after they fall to the ground, you know, he goes to their bag and then he pulls out rabbits, and you find out that they were not militia, and he just basically murdered 2 civilians. And he just very simply tells them, like, next time do your job right before coming to me, you know? And he just kind of leaves. And that is a great juxtaposition of a villain to your hero, you know? It's just showing that dark, evil side to him. I felt like was really needed, because in the beginning you get the impression that it's just like, this guy's just kind of being an asshole. Like, how outright evil is he? Is he someone who commands an army and things that have those evil ideas. And I really like that this villain has that side of him of he does a lot of the dirty work himself. He doesn't just leave it to his army to take care of, or, you know, he doesn't just regulate out those tasks. He does them himself. Obviously, it just shows that side to him that in a sick, very fucked up kind of way, he carries out this stuff himself because he almost kind of sees his army as just like nothing. Like they're not up to the task. They're not going to do what I want them to do, so I have to do it myself.
Yeah, Mr. One Man Show.
Yeah, obviously that scene was just super graphic and
very disturbing. I was very shocked. I was like, "Oh my god,
yeah,
so violent." Jeez,
this is absolutely insane. But again, I feel like it was needed because obviously, when you see him, like his appearance isn't outright evil or scary. He's actually like a very kind of well kind of kept up kind of man, you know, like he shaves his face,
he does
his hair, he has his, you know, attire that he wears. You can just tell that he cares a lot about like his appearance, like a soldier would, you know. So when you see that and then you hear the people talk about him, like some of the housemaidens are they kind of say like he's like a dandy almost, you know. He's more that he's not as much as people kind of portray him to be, but obviously seeing this evil side, you're like, nope, this guy's pretty evil.
Yeah,
it's really kind of scary.
Not somebody you want to hang out with.
Yeah. So Ophelia's first task in this kind of book that she's been given is,
which has to be one of the coolest props that I've ever seen.
I really like it.
The way the book opens up, and she doesn't know how to like. She doesn't know where the pages are, but then when the pages start popping up for the tasks, I thought that was like a really cool effect. And I'm wondering how they kind of did that. But that was a really awesome effect of like showing like the book coming to life. And it's like, again, that book looks like something you would find in a fairy tale almost. It looks like just the images and the text and how it was showing everything. I really loved that.
The way it pops out is just like you're watching something being painted like in front of you, you know?
Yeah.
It just looks super awesome. And it's really clear too to like the imagery that you see. I don't know, it kind of shows it in like a different way. Like obviously with these challenges and things, when the image pops on screen, you're just like, huh, whoa, that looks cool. And then when you see what it's meant to represent, it actually really kind of shows it in a different way, which I really enjoyed. But her first task is retrieving a key from the belly of a giant toad. So earlier on in the film, they pulled off at this area, this kind of like tree that's kind of has this hollowed out area. So she goes back to it with the help of the fairy, and in it she's crawling like in this tree, just mud everywhere, looks nasty, and you see this giant like toad creature pop out.
That design scared me so much. And again, that also just pops out of nowhere, and then just like the way the toad like kind of transforms at the end. I was like, whoa, what the?
So she has to feed this stone to this toad because it has the key inside of it. And it kind of shows how smart she is, you know. She kind of basically tricks the toad of like, you know, trying to entice it with something, and it ends up eating this stone. And then it just like vomits out its insides, and it's like this giant like I don't know, like lard of bugs and things like that falls out of it. And I really appreciate this film because obviously the whole toad leading up to it is CGI, but when this thing kind of vomits out this larva or whatever the freak it is, I don't know, it switches to practical, like actually creature, you know? And obviously it's just this lard with like the skin hanging there now. But I appreciate that. And this thing isn't on camera for that long, yet they committed to making it practical. And
it's
obviously
very memorable.
She grabs the key and pulls it off. Obviously now when you're watching it, the CGI is a little dated, doesn't really hold up too well. But I feel like with that mix of practical with the CGI, does a really good job of kind of making you believe it. I guess that's something that could be seen as a criticism, but obviously this came out in 2006, and they
Yeah.
probably didn't have the highest budget.
The technology was definitely still much more new than it is like kind of how we take it for granted now.
Yeah, but I feel like the design of the toad definitely was striking enough to convey the message. You know?
And I loved the lighting in that scene too, because it was like very dark too.
Yeah.
You know, especially because it was like in that tree, and it fit perfectly like with that setting.
Yeah.
Also,
definitely. So after she gets this key, she's taken back, and she's obviously late for this dinner that was going on. Her clothes ended up getting ruined. And like I said, in this dinner, it shows the side of the captain with the mom and everything, and just an outright asshole. She's like describing how they met, which is literally what you would ask any couple in any situation. How'd you guys meet, you know?
Yeah.
And he just outright says, like, I apologize for my wife, why she would think you guys would be interested in that story. I'm just like,
God, you're such a jerk,
I
dude.
just want to smack him. Not only are you seeing the evil side of him, then you're just like, this guy's just an outright
He just
asshole.
doesn't like people in general.
You could just tell he just doesn't really care for the interaction with people.
He's very egotistical too.
Yeah.
Also, that scene I think perfectly encapsulates that really well.
Definitely. But in this kind of scene and everything, you are seeing that Ophelia's mom is getting sick. She's not feeling well. Obviously, you're kind of thinking that the baby's going to arrive. So yeah, there's just a whole lot of uncertainty. And in this dinner scene, you're introduced to some of the other characters like the doctor. You see more sides of Mercedes and things like that.
I love the doctor character.
He's great.
In this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really is a standout. Performance is pretty subtle, which I appreciated. Basically, more of the mom. She's not feeling well. Her condition is getting worse. You know, she pretty much becomes bedridden. And the book has a very shocking kind of foreshadowing of what's going on. Really disturbing, and it really freaked me out. Obviously, Ophelia, she can only look at this book when it's in secret. You know, she doesn't want anyone to know. This is kind of like her thing, you know?
Yeah.
So she looks at the book when she's in the bathroom, and the book just gets painted red. And it's just like, what? Oh my God, like what happened? And then she exits the bathroom, and you see the mob just bleeding like crazy. And what a shock that was. I swear, when I first saw it, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it was a very disturbing vision. I legit thought it was real at first. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God. What is there? Did I miss something from the bump earlier in the film?
You're like, damn, was she that sick? Yeah. So
Yeah.
Ophelia's kind of being torn between two different things at this point. She has the very real world side of her mom and her brother and trying to help them, but also the side of the fawn and these tasks and stuff. And you get the sense that she's being pulled in two different directions. Obviously, the fawn wants her to finish these tasks and do it pretty adamantly and get it done. But the very real world consequences of her mom being sick weighs heavy on her, you know?
And kind of what happens if she doesn't maybe try to take care of her. She kind of feels like she has this big responsibility of like taking care of her, you know, even though it's not her job and she's only a kid and there's only so much she can do. And I kind of love that like the film blurs that line between like reality and blurring between like those fantasy moments where you have the fawn doing a job, having her do the tasks. I think it's a really well done portrayal of seeing how she can kind of balance both of those things.
It really is. And so in this kind of reintroduction of the fawn with this second task, he goes to her bedroom and is basically like, oh, did you finish the second task? And she says, no, my mother's been very sick, this and this. And you see a turn on him, and he really kind of becomes very kind of sinister and just like, damn.
Creepy.
Like, yeah, really starts to freak you out.
He turns, you see that more nightmarish side of that character, and I loved that so much.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, Smacks, that's not a person you want to mess with.
Yeah, he's like really kind of pissed off that she didn't finish this task. And I don't know, like I remember when I first watched it, I was like, oh damn, this guy's, he's not like this kind of nice person that I thought he
He
was.
betrayed himself to be.
So yeah, that was a great scene. But Ophelia kind of explains to him like her mom's sick. She needs to be there for her. So the fawn ends up giving her a root that will help in curing the mom, help her come back to health and everything. And he just tells her, this has to be placed near your mom, and you have to give it 3 drops of blood and everything.
Yeah.
And that root design is just kind of sickening, but
It looks like a shrimp.
yeah.
And then when it rolls out, it just looks like a deformed kind of baby.
Yeah.
Almost. It's
Really
really
just,
creepy.
Yeah, good lord. And then the fawn obviously explains that her second task is going to be challenging, basically. He gives her more fairies and tells her that she's going to a dangerous place. He tells her not to eat or drink anything she sees, and he says that her life depends on it. From a writing standpoint, that's a really great setup. That really just
sets up the rules really well.
Yeah.
Of like, okay,
the stakes of this is actually life or death.
this is very risky.
Yeah, and you can tell that even the fawn is like, you need to watch out. Like this is not, and he's even giving her more aid to help her because he knows that this task is challenging. And then obviously in the book, the drawing of this pale man appears, and it already in the book it looks freaky.
Yeah.
I swear it really just freaked me out
Stuff
seeing
of
that.
nightmares. My God.
Yeah. So already I'm like, whoa, what the hell is this? Like, this looks sickening. And he gives her this piece of chalk and everything, and how she gets to this place is like through this portal pretty much, which I just love. Like, she has this chalk and draws it on the side of her bedroom wall, and like a doorway opens up, and you're in like this fancy like shrine almost, with crazy like lighting, crazy artwork designs,
crazy colors,
just absolutely amazing. And just the throne like setting of seeing this pale man like sitting there at this table just really looked amazing. And I was like, this set design is just awesome. Like they clearly took their time in setting this up and just figuring out how to light everything. Because again, that's something we mentioned with The Thing and Rob Bottin's effects. When you're dealing with practicality, when you're dealing with in-camera effects, lighting is such a trick, because too much lighting can expose things, too less of lighting and you're not showing enough,
Yeah.
And I just loved that setup. And as she's walking through this area, she sees pictures of this pale man like killing children.
And I love that it just shows and doesn't tell.
Yeah.
I love that just from the pictures you can already get an idea of like what this pale man is like. And even like the shot of like the shoes,
oh my God,
was like really disturbing.
Eerie.
And I loved that so much. And I loved how it showed how intimidating this character is and everything that it was setting up with the fawn telling her. It was just like such a perfect way to show that character.
And it really is a great setup.
Way.
Just absolutely gets your mind stimulating. You're already kind of questioning like, okay, what's this going to look like? How is this thing going to, and then the moment you see it is just like, woo, what the fuck?
Yeah. I thought, I couldn't tell if it was like a sleep or if it was just like.
just disturbing. And then, as she's going across this table, there's just food, drinks, all this stuff laid out there. Yeah. And in front of the pale man, you see like these 2 like kind of like grapes sitting on like a plate. And she like just kind of looks at them, and you can just tell she's disturbed with what she sees. But obviously the fairies are kind of guiding her and telling her, we're here to get you're here to unlock this key. So she goes to the wall, and there's these 3 different kind of locked doors, and the fairies are trying to get her to go into this one, and she actually ends up going for this different one. And already I'm like, wait, why aren't you listening to these fairies? They probably know more than you,
Exactly.
But it kind of lends to that kind of fairy tale like story of, she has
it
a
might
purpose.
be a trap.
Exactly.
Or she's definitely going more with her gut and more of her instinct.
So she opens it up, and she takes out what she was there to retrieve, and she's leaving the room. The curiosity gets the better of her. She looks at the food, and
Yeah, which is an understandable thing.
Yeah, like I didn't really have a problem with it. Obviously in the movie you're like screaming like, don't do this, what are you doing? But when it comes down to it, it's a kid.
She's in a new environment. She's definitely like observing. You know? And that's kind of something I noticed throughout the film, is that she's definitely like an observer in this fairy tale world, in this new environment that she's in, and she's like just trying to process and take in everything.
Yeah.
And I really loved that aspect of the film a lot. And I feel like that scene of her like eating the grapes is like perfectly encapsulates like, okay, what is like the food taste like almost, because she's very curious.
Exactly. So she takes a bite of the grapes. Fairies are kind of trying to stop her. She doesn't listen.
She just shoos them away.
Yeah. And then after she bites it, absolutely amazing. The music kicks in right when the pale man moves his fingers. Just that shot of the hand moving and the music cueing in, terrifying.
My God.
It really freaked me out. And when the pale man starts to move and
puts his eyeballs in his hands,
and the sounds you hear when he's like moving just sounds like this mangled up body with bones and things, and it just the sound design is sickening, and it really freaks you out. And the hands on this thing are huge, and they have like these black fingertips and everything.
Yeah.
Creature design is just 10 out of 10. Really, really disturbing.
Jill,
yeah.
The way it moves.
I just couldn't believe what I was watching. I couldn't believe how freaked out I was. And like Wallied says, the two little balls that were sitting on the plate in front of him were actually eyeballs. And because on the pale man's face, you don't see any eyes. You just see a nose and a mouth. And in the pictures and stuff, they don't show him with eyes. He puts the eyeballs in his hands, and he holds his hands up like in front of his face. That design is freaky. It really gave me nightmares. I am just, I don't know. I applaud that. Like coming up with that creature design, something different, something original. Whoa, like that just worked on another level. And really freaks you out.
It kept me on the edge of my seat. There's definitely a lot going through my head of like, okay, is she gonna make it out of this alive or not? You know, especially when like the thing starts like chasing her and everything, and like the hourglass like runs out and she can't open the door, and so she just starts to like use the chalk up top. I'm like, oh my God, hurry up,
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely, I was just like, just on the edge. I was like, okay, please make it out of this alive.
Yeah, this whole scene does a great job of giving you that feeling that something's chasing you. It's not fast, it doesn't run. I think that ends up making it a lot more freaky. Again, great background and foreground. A lot of the shots you see Ophelia, and then you see in the background this pale man following her, and it's absolutely terrifying with the way it moves around. And it ate two of the fairies. I swear, the shot of her running to the door and it closes, I was like, she's fucked.
Yeah.
I literally thought she was gonna die, and I was like, this is insane. She's very smart, so she thinks of a different way out,
Gets the chair,
draws the chalk on the roof, and the way the scene's cut together with the music and everything, just amazing. I loved it.
Yeah, fantastic score.
So when she ends up making it out through the roof, which leads back to her room, really kind of questions, at least I was questioning how this kind of third world realm kind of works and everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't over explain too much, but it's enough to kind of stimulate your mind of like,
it's enough to have you,
how does this work?
Like interested in the world and everything that's like going on.
Really though. And I love those third realm kind of places that are tied into reality. They run parallel with our own world. I love that in movies. I love it when movies have that side. They don't explain too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great scene. I mean, it fits right in with some of the great horror scenes that I've seen. Like this is the part where I was like, this is kind of like a freaky little horror movie inside of a fantasy film. So after she escapes, we have a scene with the captain. Kind of shows a side to him where he's very smart. He works out a lot of these things for himself. I feel like kind of sets the groundwork for Hans Landa and Glorious Bastards. You know, he has a very similar feel of like that smartness, detective side to him, where he figures out people's intentions, where he figures out who's trying to work and take him down, and you know, spies and things like that. And I really like that side of the captain. Obviously he's a sick, twisted villain, but you get the sense that he's very smart, and he's not.
He's very strategic with how his plans and everything.
Yeah, and he's not someone who just simply rose to the ranks and forgets everything that he was when he was a soldier. I feel like he very much is still a part of that side, because when it shows him fighting or things like that, he's very much leading the charge, and he's very much running face first into battle. He's the first to question these people, that these hunters that he thinks are spies, you know. Again, this is something that you wouldn't expect a captain to really do, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does that. So I really like that side of him. And there's a very interesting scene with him. Obviously, it shows him, again, doing things that you would expect him to regulate to just a simple infantryman. He's cleaning his boots. He's very much upkeeping of his presentation, how he looks. And there's a shot of him shaving, and he like cuts his throat in like the mirror. Such a very interesting scene. I really get the idea that despite who he is and everything, I don't know, I got the idea that he doesn't really like himself. He doesn't like this side of him. It's a very simple, like 1 minute scene. It's very quick. But with him cutting his throat in the mirror, I just get the idea that, is he not comfortable with who he is? Does he not like what he's become? Super, super interesting.
I had the idea that he was just like very depressed, and that he was just kind of just very angry with not only just the world, but with himself. And I kind of saw that as like him kind of questioning, I guess, almost kind of like his identity. Is this the person that I want to be, you know? Or if this is like the person that he was just kind of raised to be from like maybe his parents or through the military.
Yeah.
Almost. It was very, I don't know, it was a very interesting side of that character I was just not expecting, you know?
Yeah.
Considering just how evil and villainous he is throughout.
I really appreciate that scene for being there. Gives you the idea of, okay, what's really going on. The mom's getting worse and stuff, and he tells the doctor very clearly, if you have the choice, save the baby. Very sadistic.
Very messed up.
Absolutely insane. I just was like, damn, like this guy's not playing around.
Yeah. But I guess part of me is like also like, okay, he's willing to almost just sacrifice somebody else's life just to give a newborn that chance to live.
Yeah.
You know?
Insane. And in battle, I like these war sequences. They feel very realistic, very grounded. They don't feel like a typical movie war situation. They're advancing on these guys on a hill. And obviously, like I said, he's kind of leading the charge, you know, not really scared or not really just commanding from the background. And it really speaks a lot to who he is and who his character is. And he's even encouraging like his people to push forward, you know, like what are we doing, waiting, you know? And you get the sense shortly after that, when he's in battle and he has the watch, he mentioned, I believe earlier in the film, that his dad had that watch, and at the time of his death, he had ended up basically breaking it so that way everyone would know the time he had died and everything. And I think that spoke a lot to the captain of almost kind of seeking that same end to himself, because to him, if he were to die in battle, like that would probably be the glorious end that he wants. You know, he would want people to
He's striving for,
remember him for that, you know. And it's really interesting. And obviously, at multiple times in the movie, he has that watch and you see it, that it's cracked. Very simple shots, yet it conveys a lot to who this captain is and his character. And yeah, I just really like that. They end up capturing one of the men, and you see the further side. The captain wants to torture him. And again, he doesn't have anyone else do it. This is something that he kind of takes pride in saying.
My God.
And it's really fucked up. The guy he captures has like this stutter. And earlier in the
Yeah.
film, there's some jokes and things kind of lent towards that.
It's a cool foreshadowing thing too. Also, I didn't even notice it
Yeah.
until he started getting interrogated. I was like, "Oh God,
Yeah.
no!"
Insane. And he gives the person a chance to save his own life. Again, very sadistic. He's like, if you can count to 3 without stuttering, I will let you go. And he even tells one of his men, like, well, won't I let them go? And the guy says, yeah, he will, pretty much. Again, really sadistic, really fucked up. It's kind of like an on the edge of your seat kind of moment. I would say reminiscent of a feeling for me was like No Country for Old Men, when Anton Chigurh is in the gas station with that guy. Very simple, yet it's building tension. Like when you're listening to this guy count, you're just like, oh shit, like what's about to happen,
You're like tense up.
Yeah, you're just tense. And it's like, it's very subtle. Like nothing really crazy is that happening. He's just counting, And obviously he doesn't count all the way. And
he gets close though.
Yeah. It's damn, like, I don't know. That was a great scene. And then it cuts to Ophelia, and the fawn is mad that she didn't follow his rules, what he told her to do.
And it shows the consequences of it, which I
love.
loved.
He abandons her to the human world. He's like, you're not the one, basically,
Which was also just really messed up. I was like, damn. Like, dang.
Yeah,
Okay.
again, it's like you have this third world presence that you think is kind of watching out for this girl, and just the fact that he simply abandons and just dismisses her is just like, damn, I didn't expect them to do that, And it has that, again, it has the mysterious side of the fawn of like, is he on the side of this girl or is he not,
Yeah, he definitely seems a lot more neutral compared to everybody else in the film.
And then the captain goes to Ophelia, and the mom and everything. She goes to find him because the mom's basically getting sick. When he gets into the room, Ophelia is obviously checking on the root and everything, giving it the blood and stuff. And this root's kind of grown, and the captain ends up finding the root. Now, this is interesting. I question in this movie sometimes because at points in the movie, I was wondering, okay, is this in Ophelia's mind? Is it something only she can see? What else is tangible to other people, Because obviously the labyrinth's there. There's a Mercedes explains like the whole tale of this location. Yet there are other hints in the movie where certain characters can't see like the fawn or something like that. Yet the captain is very much able to grab this root and he sees it, So I was really kind of wondering, I was like, okay, like how does this work? How does this world kind of work? Because obviously I'm kind of wondering, is this like the imagination of a child? Is this just something that only they can see? Similar to a Polar Express?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
That's what I was thinking at first. And I thought about that towards the end, but I'm like, I don't really know. I wonder if it was just maybe like the imagination was coming to life just in that particular moment because it did save the mom's life.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it was just maybe that for that one moment. But I do think just from my first time experiencing it and watching it, I think I'm on the side of I think it's in her imagination.
Oh, okay.
Because it does kind of just come naturally to her. You
Yeah.
know? It comes to her at the right times in the film. And of course it abandons her because it's like now she doesn't have any help. I see that as like she doesn't have any mental help now. So now she's kind of have to like figure everything out on her own, and deal with the reality of her mom and the situation that she's in at the moment.
Now, earlier before that, I forgot to mention, after it shows the guy who got tortured, Jesus Christ, he's mangled, and it is disturbing. He's fucked up. And obviously the captain or the captain tells the doctor basically to like save him, The doctor's on the side of these rebels and everything, and he very generously is just like, I'm not going to do it, like this is insane. And he basically ends up giving him medicine, probably enough to just put him to sleep, put him out of his misery. And in that, the captain finds a bottle of morphine that was very similar to the ones that he picked up off those rebels. Again, he lays kind of these traps and things for, him to catch these kind of spies. Obviously, one was with the locking of all the the food, medicine, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
He only gave the key to one person, you know, so he's kind of protecting himself in a way by setting these people up, you
And I
know.
love that it shows it just with like the shot of him like holding both of the bottles to
Mhm.
see if it's really, instead of like explaining it and being like, "Oh, actually, this bottle was from
Looks
somebody."
familiar.
Oh, I wonder where it could be.
Yeah.
Again, I kind of love that it shows that like detective side of the villain of him just trying to investigate the Rebel Alliance. It definitely makes it much more satisfying and rewarding, and even sadder when he does capture like that Rebel Alliance.
Yeah.
It just shows how smart he is, but it also shows just how far he will go to get rid of this like Rebel Alliance, basically.
Yeah. Then he ends up, obviously, the doctor. He ends up killing the doctor. Very kind of sad scene with the rain and everything. Looks great.
Yeah, that use of blue is fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know. It shows that side of him of, again, like, this doctor is probably one of the few people who can help save your baby and stuff, yet you still kill him because he betrayed you, you know, things like that. Just shows you that if you betray him and stuff like that, like, to him, that's the ultimate like betrayal, you know. But it's great. I love it.
It's very consistent to his character too. I kind of love that like the film doesn't try to like make him more sympathetic. It just shows him he's just even more evil by the time we get to the second half.
And one of the lines that I love that was said about the captain, it's the doctor, knows he's been caught, or the captain basically is like, pretty much the rebel's dead now, he killed him. And the captain's like, why did you let that happen? I told you to save him. The doctor says a great line. He says, to obey just for the sake of obeying is something only you can do, Captain. And then he walks away. What a fantastic line.
Yeah.
And it just really kind of shows you that this is how the world perceives these people of power, you know. It's just like they think they have ultimate power and control over everything, but in the end of the day, it's like they're just obeying someone who's even higher than them. You know, they're just carrying out tasks that pretty much you're a soldier, you know.
Yeah.
And just because you think you're threatening me with my life doesn't mean I'm going to do what you do all the time, just obeying orders, you know. And I love that. I feel like that really shows you, as much as this captain wants control and everything,
he's never gonna get it.
All these people still have a leg up on him because they don't just follow orders blindly, you know. I love that. And then you start to feel a little paranoid for Mercedes because I feel like the ground was kind of shrinking underneath her, and you feel like she could eventually get caught at any moment because obviously she's the only one with the key to that place. And the captain is very aware of, wait a minute, these people have been taking things from here, yet the lock was not destroyed, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very smart.
I was on the edge. I was like, oh no, they're going to capture her now.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Does the mom die shortly after that?
Yeah.
Before Ophelia and before Mercedes takes Ophelia, right?
Yeah, so the mom ends up like giving birth pretty much, and the general he's like waiting there with Ophelia, and the other person there says that she's dead, and he takes the baby pretty much like for himself.
Oh, okay.
Which was just like a very sad scene, you know.
Yeah.
And again, it just shows you that he just doesn't care about people at all, and that he's just willing to just take the baby for himself.
He really just wants that heir to everything that he has, you know. And then after that, Mercedes obviously knows stuff is about to happen to her, so she, in a desperate attempt, tries to take Ophelia with her to escape, you know, because Ophelia, she doesn't have anything there now, you know. Her mom died.
Nothing left. She took her brother.
The fawn pretty much abandoned her, so she's feeling very lost in this situation.
Yeah. And
obviously they leave, but then very shortly after, they end up getting captured. And at that point, I was like, damn, Mercedes is probably going to die as well. And again, a great moment of these rebels and everything, showing their side of things. The captain very thinks that he just has a leg up on everyone. But it's just the act of simply his will towards things compared to these rebels. You know, he's not in these extreme situations that they are, yet they're able to always have that upper foot on him. And in the scene when he's interrogating Mercedes, she outsmarts him. And I love it so much. And I believe there was a line that she says, very kind of similar to the doctor's line of like, basically, this is how I was able to beat you. You know, you may think you're winning, but you're not. I believe he says a line to her, something about how she's a woman or whatever. And she says, and that's why I was able to get away with it.
Yeah.
And I just love that. That is great writing, great moments, and just such an awesome juxtaposition to this completely evil, twisted person that we see. And you think that he's winning, you know, but in actuality, he isn't.
He's losing.
He is. And she says, "You won't be the first pig I've gutted." And she just slashes at him. And gives him a fucking Joker smile.
Half a Joker smile.
Man, I love that scene.
God.
And they're one of the only kind of comedic moments in the movie, but I'm glad it's there. It's really funny. Earlier, one of the other ranking officials takes a lottery ticket off one of the rebels. And it's very simple. Like, he didn't really think anything of it in the situation. Yet when it cuts to the next scene of Mercedes kind of escaping and the guards are like, huh, the captain let her go. That's weird. You hear in the background that the guard is listening to the lottery numbers and he has the ticket. I don't know why I laughed. I thought that was really funny.
I could see why the guards thought that, because they told that about the other guy earlier.
Yeah.
Of like, oh yeah, they'll let you go.
They end up running, and then the rebels pretty much end up saving her. Great sequence of her running from these guys on horses and everything. I would just assume she was dead. Yet the rebels get an upper hand on them. And
yeah, well, all of them are coming in. That was awesome.
That was awesome.
That was fantastic. I was like, yes. There's a beacon of hope in this film.
Feels rewarding, you know?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Captain Vidal he wasn't lethally killed, which sucks because she really slashed him up, and yet he's fine. And he's even stitching up his like Joker smile.
Yeah.
And he tries to like drink this alcohol and it just immediately like seeps through his mouth. I thought it was so funny. And yet he still drinks another shot after that. I don't know. My sense of humor is stupid.
I guess he thought the second time was a charm.
Shortly after that, the fawn reappears and he ends up changing his mind. Kind of interesting. I don't really know what prompted it. Maybe it was the death of the mom, you know. It's never clearly stated, you know.
Yeah, he's a very interesting character because I'm like, what is his like way of thinking?
Exactly.
Almost, you know. I'm like, because like part of him is like, okay, he's trying to be this charming, nice like creature, but at the same time, he's also like, he wants to set the rules and he wants kind of control of everything. So it's like, what kind of side is like kind of he on, you know?
Yeah.
So it was like a mix of me just trying to question like his character and everything of like, does he care about her, you know? And I felt like when he did come back, I felt like he kind of had like a change of heart, that maybe he was being too harsh with her, you know, especially because it was her first time and that she didn't really know too much about like that whole kind of world and everything.
Yeah.
So I think watching that scene, it was like, okay, he definitely had a change of heart at some point for sure.
Part of me wonders is it, in archetypes and things, is he meant to resemble like that neutral evil kind of archetype that you always hear about, of like, he's not good or bad, he's just kind of in the middle, yet he kind of is that evilness kind of personified, you know? Because a lot of the stuff and the way he treats Ophelia and the way he acts, and then obviously towards the end of the movie, you're just like questioning, like, wait, what is, I can't get a dial on this thing, you know?
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just something I was kind of thinking of. So he, having changed his mind, he returns and tells her to bring her newborn brother into the labyrinth to complete the third challenge. So she has to sneak in and try to find a way to get her brother from the captain. And he gives her another piece of that chalk, which I thought was great. I was like, that's cool. Because she was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. And a very nice moment of her kind of outsmarting the captain, trying to figure out how do I go about this. And very quickly, again, the rebels are advancing in on the captain's location and everything. He's down to only a couple men after they all died chasing Mercedes, you know. So you get the sense that his demise is about to happen, you know, whether he likes it or not. Ophelia is able to retrieve the baby very quickly, goes to the labyrinth. And while the rebels break in, everything's just going to shit. You know, there's battle breaking out. And the captain ends up pursuing Ophelia.
Why'd she have to stand right there?
Yeah, going through this labyrinth. I swear, she had a shortcut. Like literally the walls broke down in front of her to get her to the middle while the captain has to go through this maze. And already I'm like, come on, she can make it, you know? And it's just, it's unfortunate. But at that moment, Ophelia meets the fawn at the center of the labyrinth. The fawn suggests drawing a small amount of the baby's blood as completing the third task and opening the portal to the underworld. It requires the blood of an innocent. But Ophelia refuses to harm her brother.
And it
Great
shows
moment.
her that she's very sympathetic, and that even though she doesn't know her brother all that much, she's still just very caring, and she's willing to do anything for him.
You really get the sense that this is kind of all she has left now. You know?
It's like the only family she has, basically.
Yeah. And as much as, you know, as enticing as this different world realm sounds, she's not going to risk it all for her brother, you know?
Yeah.
And I really liked that. Captain Vidal finds her. He's able to make it through the maze. I don't know how. But he made it through.
Artsy smartsy.
And he finds her talking to the fawn, but he can't see him. And again, this is where I'm like,
that's kind of why
this is interesting,
like,
you know?
Yeah, like that's all in her head, and that it's kind of like in her imagination, because she doesn't, the captain is like an outsider. He doesn't really see it either. So that's why I'm like, okay, it has to kind of be like in her imagination, right?
Yeah.
But
and part of me wonders too, is it that otherworldly presence and things that is only known to like a child, you know?
Yeah.
Are they trying to portray that like only like the viewpoint of the kid can convey this, you know? But I really like that. That was a very subtle little hint right there when the captain sees her talking, but he's like, what's is she talking to? You know, similar to like a cloak and dagger kind of thing. So Vidal ends up taking the baby from Ophelia's arms, and he ends up shooting her, which really just caught me off guard. I was like, holy shit, you know?
Again, it shows that he doesn't care about people at all, and that he's just he will do anything to have that baby with him.
Really, though, he leaves her there, takes the baby. I already got this feeling that how is he going to escape? And he returns to the labyrinth's entrance, where he's surrounded by the rebels, including Mercedes and her brother, knowing full well that he's probably about to die. He hands the baby to Mercedes, asking that his son be told the time of his father's death. Before he's able to finish off what he's saying, Mercedes simply replies that his son will not even know his name, and Pedro just shoots him. Which I loved.
One of the most satisfying deaths I've seen in a movie.
It was awesome. And it kind of shows that the tragedy of this character of the captain, following orders, carrying out demands of everything, turns you into this evil person. But with him still being evil and everything, he had his aspirations and stuff of what he wanted and how he wanted to be remembered. And the fact that he's not going to get that kind of shows the tragedy of that character. You know, I'm not saying I'm sympathize with him or anything, but I'm glad that the movie has that, and I'm glad that Guillermo felt the need to show that with his character, because it's just a messed up situation. So Mercedes, obviously, they go into the labyrinth and she finds Ophelia. She's dying. She's laying on the edge of the labyrinth, the portal entrance, and drops of blood fall down from her at the center of the spiral stone staircase onto the altar, basically, of that stone. Mercedes starts to hum this lullaby that we have been hearing.
It's a great lullaby.
And ties back into the beginning. That's how the movie starts, with that song. She's just there to comfort her pretty much as she dies. Really sad, and you
Very
wouldn't expect a
bleak.
movie to do that, you know? Had the movie ended there, oh my God, would have just been depressing.
Yeah.
But then Ophelia kind of awakens in this other realm, you know? And she's well dressed and uninjured, and she appears in like this golden kind of throne room. And the king of the underworld tells her that by choosing to spill her own blood rather than that of another, she passed the final test. And the faun praises Ophelia for her choice, addressing her as Your Highness. And the queen of the underworld, her mother, invites Ophelia to sit next to her father and rule at his side. Back in the stone labyrinth, cuts back, and Ophelia smiles as she dies. An amazing.
I feel like that represents like heaven.
Yeah.
You know, like that's her going to kind of like the afterlife now.
Exactly.
Pretty much, you know, which is very sad and bleak, but man, it's very powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And
wow.
I like the look of the other realm and everything. The throne and everything looks very different from the world you had been seeing, you know?
Yeah, it's very bright. A lot of gold, a lot of red. It looks like just something out of like a fantasy like king world almost, you know?
It's amazing. And then the epilogue happens, and it completes the tale of the Princess Moana, and stating that she returned to the underworld, ruled with kindness and justice for many centuries, and left traces of her time in the human realm, visible only to those who know where to look. And I feel like in that line represents kind of what we were seeing of Ophelia only really kind of notices certain things and stuff, and shows you that, you know, there are those beautiful signs and things like that are there, but you have to know where to look, you know. And great ending shot of that flower. I just loved it. And obviously the insect. Overall, this movie is fantastic. I haven't seen a movie with this fantasy kind of feel to it that pulls off the fantasy side and the real world side really good. Again, I said it earlier, this really does feel reminiscent of a Miyazaki live action Ghibli film, but it does it in such a different way. Has amazing designs and everything. Has amazing soundtrack, great direction. I guess if I had any critiques of the film, this would be more on a technical side. This is just my point of view. I feel like with the cameras that they shot it with have kind of, I don't want to make it sound like I'm attacking the film, but they have like a TV kind of quality to it. I don't know if that was the intention, but some of the shots and the way they're lit and the frame of everything feels almost like I'm watching kind of like something made for TV, you know? It might be my own point of view, but it really felt a little jarring at some points to the way things were lit and everything. Overall, I still really enjoyed the look and every presentation of this movie. However, I just feel like the cameras that they chose to shoot it with don't really help the quality of the film, in my opinion. And also with the aspect ratio, that's why I think it has that TV feel. Is the aspect ratio is like, it's not a traditional kind of widescreen format. It's full screen. Kind of reminiscent of the Avengers 2012, how Joss Whedon kind of shot it on those TV cameras, you know, to give that kind of episodic kind of feel to it, you know.
Okay.
And I don't really like that. I'm very particular with, I like the normal aspect ratios, you know, the normal kind of frame rates that movies are presented in. So maybe that's what it is. When I see something kind of outside of that, it does feel a little jarring. But that was just something that I noticed on rewatch, and probably my only complaint with this film, if I were to have any. Wallied, did you have any issues with the film or anything?
No, I couldn't really think of too many complaints or issues. I think it does everything super well, and I love how fast, surprisingly, it goes by so quickly, and I'm just on the edge of my seat, and I'm just really invested a lot of the time in everything that's going on. The cameras, I thought the camera work was really fantastic. I really loved like the way it would transition with some of like the ways it would like move into like the branches. I thought that was like a really cool thing. I kind of love that full screen aspect ratio because it gives that like view of like the world and everything around her. I
Mm-hmm.
think it fit kind of perfectly with like just the world that she was in and just like showing those colors and like popping out more,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So I didn't see that as too much of an issue, at least for me, from like my first time
Yeah.
experiencing it. But yeah, I wouldn't really say I have any complaints with the film. I think the everything it does everything really well, and I was kind of surprised that the movie's 2 hours, and I didn't really feel like that 2 hour runtime at all. It felt like 30 minutes or like an hour, honestly.
Yeah.
I was just surprised how quickly it goes by, and like you're considering you're following like three different characters. You know, it feels like you get like equal screen time with like all of them. You know, it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like one gets too much or one gets too little. You know,
Yeah.
it has like that perfect spot that I really love, and I love that it shows all those characters really well. But yeah, this has to be one of the best. This might be my favorite Del Toro film, honestly. I still need to check out some of his earlier films, and I still need to check out Shape of Water and Nightmare Alley. But I think for now, I would probably say this is my favorite Guillermo del Toro film.
Mm-hmm.
I think just everything about this film is perfect. I love just the technical stuff, and I love a lot of the creature designs, and I love just the story and the characters. I love just how emotionally and personally invested I got into the main character and her whole journey. I loved how dark it got and how disturbing it would get at points. And I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was just, I just was so shocked that the places it was going. And
Yeah.
it just was like, wow, I don't even know how you even come up with some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would just say overall, I really loved this. I think this film is just absolutely fantastic. I think for me, for talking score wise, I'd probably give it a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this film is just genuinely incredible. And I'm just kind of eager to watch it again, honestly, after watching it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really amazing. It just fires on all cylinders. I know I say that a lot with certain movies that I enjoy, but to me, that's the mark of a great movie. Again, when everything feels unified in service of the story and stuff it's trying to portray, and they find that they all synchronize together really well. Again, camera work, direction, acting, set design, costume design, everything just feels in full service of this vision. Um, and in tying certain genres and subgenres together, sometimes it can feel jarring, yet everything it feels blended together super, super well. There are so many lines of dialogue that I just love in this movie that really do a great job of conveying the situation that everyone is in. I'd mentioned a few of them here that just stood out to me on rewatch. Just absolutely great writing, great lines. Yeah, again, nitpick. I feel like the cameras had a certain feel to them, but you know, obviously that could have been an intention. That could have been something they were going for. So it doesn't really affect my overall scoring or anything, but that was something I just noticed on rewatch. And obviously, some of the CGI may not hold up too well now, but for me, it blends together CGI and practical effects really well.
Hmm.
That's something that I love a lot in movies when they combine the two rather than just go one over the other.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I feel like it does it really well. I feel like I haven't seen a fantasy film kind of like this since this movie came out. I know the fantasy genre did get a little overplayed and it ended up kind of collapsing in on itself. But I feel like that happens with every moment in pop culture where we see trends and you know, it eventually just gets beat to death.
Yep.
But that doesn't reduce the effect of some of the great movies that come out of those genres. And this movie is definitely one of them. It just stands the test of time, and I can't recommend it enough. Again, it's one of my favorite foreign films ever made,
Nice.
and I really just can't recommend it enough that you guys watch this movie. I love the creature designs of the fawn, pale man.
Yeah.
Just amazing. So yeah, check it out. I believe I watched it on Prime. It was streaming on Prime. So if you guys are interested, I cannot recommend it enough. And surprisingly, with the foreign language of this film, I was able to get across everything with subtitles and everything. I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. I felt like this is actually is conveying really, really well, you know?
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
really
that's awesome.
just absolutely enjoyed it. So yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 for me. One of the best films I've ever seen. I think we've just been on a string of 10s out of 10s,
Yeah.
just nonstop. But
Tens everywhere.
that should just show you guys that please, like, go and check out these movies. Let us know what you think. Like,
Yeah.
I want to hear your opinions. If it's something that didn't work with you, or maybe it's not as to a high of standard that I want to hold it to, that's totally fine, you know.
Yeah.
But that's something that I do like, and obviously it was going to happen at some point. We're going to start recommending some of our favorite films that we love.
Yeah.
So obviously they're gonna all be great, you know.
And considering this was my first time watching it, I was just kind of like shocked how much I loved it so much. Like I always try to keep my expectations low whenever we have the recommendations, but I just was like so just enthralled and invested in everything that was happening, and I was just kind of shocked and kind of beating myself up a bit that I was like, man, I wish I watched this movie earlier.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I genuinely think this film is incredible.
Absolutely great. And this was a movie for me that introduced me to Guillermo Del Toro, and after that, he just
Nice.
became a director that I just always look forward to his next project.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that he never got to direct his Hobbit movies. Really wish that would have
Yeah.
happened, because when you watch this movie, man,
He's perfect
man, would
for
that
it.
have worked? That would have been just such a great combining of two worlds that I love, you know, seeing the
Yeah,
Lord of the Rings
absolutely.
and then seeing it through the eyes of Del Toro. I would have just ate it up.
Would have been perfect. One thing I hope to see Guillermo del Toro do more in the future after seeing his Pinocchio film is I do hope he goes more into like the medium of animation, because I feel like watching Pan's Labyrinth, as much as I loved it, I was like, I feel like this could be like perfect as like an animated, like a 2D animated film. And I've heard it before, Del Toro mentioning it in a few interviews that he wants to do more animated films. So I'm hoping that we get more animated films from him, because I feel like he's like perfect for that medium.
Yeah. So yeah, check it out, guys. It's worth watching. It is a little graphic at sometimes, but it works, and it works in
very
context of the
effective.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Wallied, what are we going to talk about next time?
All right, Navahi. So we're going to go with something a bit more, how do I describe it? I guess hilariosity from is how I'm describing this one. It's a man by the name of Neil Breen. He is considered to be the king of so bad it's good filmmaking. And I'm curious to kind of see how this discussion will play out. This will be my first time seeing this film. I've wanted to watch some of this man's movies. So we're going with a film called Fateful Findings.
Okay.
And it's from 2013. So this is going to involve some internet. So it's about a computer scientist / novelist who reunites with his childhood friend, hacks into government databases, and faces the dire and fateful consequences of the mystical actions he obtained as a child. So yeah, right there, it seems pretty epic with one of the funniest posters I've ever seen in my entire life.
God.
That's I'm sorry, Navahi. So
What if I don't make it through it? What if I can't finish it? What does that mean?
I have to,
Like, what if that
I
happens?
have no idea.
Because when we're talking about bad movies, like, man, is it hard for me to sit through bad movies.
But from what I've heard this is like one of the more entertaining bad films.
Okay.
So there might be like you might not get bored with this one.
Oh, no.
But I don't know. I'm just curious to see how this will play out. I thought we'd kind of try out something new.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know. I've been very intrigued by Neil Breen because I've heard so much about him over the past couple of years, and I've heard a lot of things about him, and I've seen clips of his like films online, and so yeah,
Nice.
I'm curious to see how this will. I'm sorry, Navai. So I'm curious to see how this will play out. So if you guys don't want to be spoiled for Fateful Findings by Neil Breen, if you look at the crew credits, he kind of did everything. So yeah, he's a one man. He's a one man show. So yeah. Don't want to be spoiled.
Guys, if you look at that poster that I just saw, oh my God, it looks horrendous. But we're gonna try it. We're gonna try it. If I can't make it through it, I can't make it through it. But I guess it will be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Navahi. We have to do it.
No, you're good. Little house cleaning bit of info. This is our last time recording at this current location that we've been in. I know you guys have probably heard background noise at some point and things like that. We are going to be now recording in a different location. Hopefully, kind of mitigate some of that interference that we have with certain episodes. But it's been a ride. It's been great coming in here. This is always going to be the birthplace of this grand idea that we both had. So yeah, I'm going to miss it here. But just so you guys know, there may be a little bit of a delay with the next episode because I have not recorded in this new location. I don't know if it echoes. I don't know if I need to purchase different equipment. It is a much smaller room, I would say. So the chances of echo might be a little high. So there could be a delay in regards to new stuff. So I apologize. But yeah, just a little bit of info on the background of everything.
Yeah, I'll definitely miss this place. It's kind of where it kind of all started, pretty much. And then, yeah, sorry for the delay. You'll miss our most epic discussion.
Yep.
I can't say it with a straight face, but
and
yeah.
In a couple weeks we'll start up some holiday stuff, our little holiday season. It's not going to be as drawn out as like the horror season is, just because I feel like I only like a couple of holiday movies.
Okay, yeah. There's only like a few I could count on my finger that I actually like really love. So
there's not a lot of them. So be on the lookout for that. And then we'll be kicking up more reviews here in the future. We just need to make sure that this recording space fits our needs. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah. Great recommendation.
Awesome. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Check out Pan's Labyrinth, guys. It really is an amazing ride. And like I always say, my body is ready. I'll see you guys on the next one.
And like I always say, good day, good night, mates.